Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. I'm Yusuke, and this is a short video I was going to make on how I've been orchestrating Git Worktrees for agents, and I use this tool I wrote called Lelouch to do so. So what are Git Worktrees and how do agents use them? Well, you have a Git repository, but the problem is if you want to have multiple agents maybe do different operations on the code, you only have one repo and directory, so it's hard to scale that. Git Worktrees is a great way to kind of address that problem where you would create multiple different directories that share the same .git sub hidden directory. And what will happen there is you can have multiple different directories on disk and CD into them and launch agents in them. They'll do the operation specifically on that branch. Every work tree checks out a separate branch, and now you've got parallel work. A lot of people do this sort of manually where they'll create the work tree, open an agent in them, they'll run a prompt and push and commit at the end. I had a couple extra use cases on top of that. So one thing is I don't really want to do this by hand. I want to sort of dynamically scale the number of work trees I need based on the work that I have, or at least I'd like to create them that way. And also, I wanted to look at maybe reusing the work trees a little bit more. So you can definitely reuse the work trees with the manual workflow as well, but it gets a little tricky with things like doing the git reset at the end. Then you have to queue the next agent. And so I wanted something that's going to work seamlessly with my workflow. So if you take a look, this is the Lelouch repository. I've given a video about how to use this in the past, but it's basically a way to pull issues from an issue database known as beads and actually fire off the work in individual work trees. An improvement I've made since the last one is I have the ability to now dynamically create as many work trees as I want, and effectively it'll clone that, create that, and then basically run that agent with the issue in there. And then at the very end, they synchronize against the version control, in this particular case, Git, as part of that. So the setup is pretty straightforward. Um, the workflow is, you start by initializing beads. Then you can run this Lelouch init, and it'll basically have a field for the max number of workers that you specify. After that point, you'll go ahead and spawn them. It'll create those work trees um, for you the next time you hit Lelouch run. Now, one piece of the puzzle is the work tree itself, and what Lelouch will do to it is reset it back to the original state every single time. So there's one last piece of the puzzle, which is how do you kind of go do that final push? And the way that I do it is if it has to be something that the agent is going to do for you, I prefer to have the agent do it because that way it can do the pull, look at whether there's some sort of merge conflict, resolve those, and then do the final push at the end. But there's a couple of approaches. One is you can go ahead and include it in your agents.md. So this is a repository containing a game that I'm working on right now. And I just go ahead and include this specific instruction to do the upstream head. Um, if you wanted to do a pull request workflow, you would modify this instruction to include that. Or Lelouch does provide this ability to add a pre-prompt. And so you'll be able to populate this as part of the config init command when you do Lelouch init in your local repo. But if you want, you can go touch this config.toml file by hand, and you could go ahead and include a prompt in here that says something like, please commit and push the results to the remote head.
So, one tricky problem in particular was this issue with pushing from multiple work trees to the same origin primary branch, on the remote. So, for those who've used work trees in the past, you may already know a work tree and a branch can only map one to one locally. So, for example, you cannot check out main on multiple different work trees. So, you cannot sort of like build commits on top of them or whenever you have to make feature branches. And so that worked fine, but the main issue is when you actually need to push back to the remote upstream, like the remote head, like main. And that's because, well, you can't, you have to do things like maybe try to check out the main branch and sort of like merge your thing on top and do the push. It can become a little bit tricky. And so the solution that I found was you can use the symbolic ref command to go find the remote head branch, and then you can actually do a direct push. So, assuming there's no conflicts, your local branch, which is on the feature branch, is going to basically go do that direct push to main. If you do find that, you'll do the pull and rebase and conflict resolution that the agent can handle that part. And so I found that this was a key piece to kind of resolve that part. And now I have multiple branches which are able to push and work directly off of main.
Okay, so it's time to look at this in action. I have my issues queued up through BD list here, and I'm going ahead and gonna start running Lelouch, and it will start to basically pull up those two work trees, and you'll see that it's already kind of picked up those two pieces of work in the individual work trees that I have locally. And if I open my nice beads UI on the left, I can see that the issues are in progress, and we are off to the races. So here's work tree 1, and it's kind of started launching. Here's work tree 2. There you go. I hope this was useful. If you're interested in using Lelouch, please let me know. Right now, it's kind of a internal only project for myself, but I am interested in sharing it if it's valuable to you. Happy to publish a production version. And thanks for tuning in. I hope the pattern was useful. Thanks.